13. Coco Chanel, 1883–1971. The name Chanel evokes a specific universe of luxury: the quilted bag, the little black dress, and the distinct scent of No. 5, Gabrielle. Coco Chanel was not merely a fashion designer, she was a revolution in herself. She liberated women from the tyranny of corsets, introducing jersey fabric and menswear-inspired silhouettes that defined the modern woman of the 20th century. Her achievements in design are undisputed, creating a brand that remains the pinnacle of haute couture. Yet, behind the monochrome elegance and the pearls, Chanel harbored a secret life that was far darker than the black fabric she popularized. While the world knew her as the queen of Parisian fashion, intelligence files declassified long after her death revealed that she was also known as Agent F7124. Her codename was Westminster. During the German occupation of France in the 1940s, while other citizens starved or joined the resistance, Chanel lived in luxury at the Hotel Ritz, which served as the headquarters for the German Luftwaffe. Her double life was not merely one of passive survival. She was an active operative for the Abwehr, the German military intelligence. Her recruitment began in 1941. Chanel, an opportunist by nature and an anti-Semite by conviction, aligned herself with the occupiers to secure her status and attempt to wrest control of her perfume company from her Jewish business partners, the Wertheimers. She used her connections to travel to Madrid on intelligence missions, leveraging her high society contacts to glean information for the Third Reich. Her lover during this period was Baron Hans Günther von Dinklage, a German officer and spy. The revelation of her specific agent number and mission details paints a chilling portrait of a woman who traded her country's freedom for personal gain and comfort. Chanel escaped punishment after the war, largely due to the intervention of high-ranking British friends, including Winston Churchill, who shielded her from the purges that claimed the lives of other collaborators. She returned to the fashion world in 1954, reinventing herself once more, and successfully buried her wartime activities under layers of tweed and chiffon. She died in 1971. Her secret life as a Nazi agent, known only to a few intelligence officers and hidden within classified archives. Her grave lies in Lausanne, Switzerland, at the Bois de Vaux Cemetery. It is a resting place that reflects the carefully curated image she maintained until the end. The grave is adorned with 5 stone lions, a reference to her astrological sign, Leo, and the number 5 that brought her fortune. The white flowers and the pristine stone offer no hint of the agent F7124. It is a beautiful, serene spot surrounded by hedges, maintaining the silence she demanded in life. Standing before it, one sees the monument of a fashion icon, but history sees the resting place of a spy who bet on the wrong side of humanity. 12. Charles Lindbergh, 1902–1974. In 1927, a shy, lanky pilot named Charles Lindbergh accomplished the impossible: a solo, non-stop flight across the Atlantic Ocean. The spirit of St. Louis touched down in Paris, and Lindbergh became the most famous man on Earth. He was the American Eagle, the embodiment of courage and technological progress. His achievements in aviation and his later work in rocketry and medical engineering were monumental. However, the public narrative of his life was dominated by 2 things: his heroic flight and the tragic kidnapping and murder of his firstborn son in 1932. Beneath the veneer of the stoic American hero and the devoted husband to Anne Morrow Lindbergh, Charles led a secret life of staggering complexity. It was not until decades after his death that the world learned Lindbergh had established 3 separate secret families in Germany. Between 1957 and 1967, the aviator fathered 7 children with 3 different women: Brigitte Heschmer, her sister Marietta, and his personal secretary Valeska. To these German families, he was not the famous aviator. He was Caro Kent, an eccentric American writer who would visit for a few days at a time, bringing gifts and taking the children on outings, before disappearing again for months. He managed this quadruple life with the precision of a pilot, maintaining separate households and keeping his American family in the dark. The children in Germany only learned the true identity of their father after investigating his papers long after he had passed away. This revelation shattered the image of the moral, upstanding hero, revealing a man obsessed with eugenics and the spreading of his own genetic material, driven by a strange biological imperative he kept hidden from the world. Lindbergh died of lymphoma in 1974 on the island of Maui, Hawaii. He had chosen his final resting place with the same meticulous planning he applied to his flights. He was buried in the grounds of the Palapala Ho'omau Church in Kipahulu. The grave is simple, covered by smooth lava stones and surrounded by the lush, tropical vegetation of the remote Pacific coast. The inscription on his headstone is a verse from Psalm 139. "If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea." It is a fitting epitaph for a man who spent his life in the sky and crossing oceans. The grave is quiet, often disturbed only by the wind and the distant sound of the surf. It gives no indication of the 3 secret families across the Atlantic or the complex web of lies he spun to keep his worlds apart. It is the final hiding place of a man who lived his life in the spotlight but kept his true self in the shadows. 11. Bob Crane, 1928–1978. Bob Crane was the wholesome, charming face of American television in the 1960s. As the star of Hogan's Heroes, he played Colonel Robert Hogan, the witty and clever prisoner of war who constantly outsmarted his German captors. Crane was a talented drummer, a radio personality, and a beloved comic actor. To the public, he was a family man and an affable star who radiated a safe suburban charisma. This image was the foundation of his career, but it was a facade that hid a compulsive and dangerous double life. Crane was addicted to sex and the documentation of his sexual conquests. When the cameras stopped rolling on the set of Hogan's Heroes, Crane ventured into the sexual underground of Hollywood and Scottsdale, Arizona. He didn't just participate, he pioneered a form of amateur pornography. Teaming up with a video equipment salesman named John Carpenter, Crane used the newly available portable video technology to record his encounters with countless women. This was his secret obsession, a driving force that slowly eroded his career and his marriage. The double life came to a brutal end on June 29, 1978. Crane was found bludgeoned to death in his apartment in Scottsdale. He had been beaten with a camera tripod, and an electrical cord was tied around his neck. The murder scene was gruesome, a stark contrast to the light-hearted antics of Colonel Hogan. The investigation peeled back the layers of his life, exposing his collection of homemade pornography and his association with Carpenter. The murder remains officially unsolved, though Carpenter was long the prime suspect. Crane's secret life had not only destroyed his reputation, but likely led directly to his violent death. Bob Crane is buried in Westwood Village Memorial Park in Los Angeles, California. His grave is located in Section D, a modest marker in a cemetery filled with Hollywood legends. The inscription reads, "Robert Edward Crane," with the dates 1928 to 1978 and the epitaph, "Beloved Husband and Father." Visitors to the grave often leave coins or small mementos related to Hogan's Heroes. The simplicity of the marker belies the chaotic and dark reality of his final years. It stands as a somber reminder of how a carefully constructed public image can completely obscure a destructive private reality. 10. Hedy Lamarr, 1914–2000. Hedy Lamarr was billed as the most beautiful woman in the world. An Austrian-born actress who fled a restrictive marriage and the rising Nazi threat to conquer Hollywood, she starred in films like Algiers and Samson and Delilah. Her screen presence was defined by her striking glamour, her raven hair, and an exotic allure that captivated audiences in the 1930s and 40s. To the public and the studio heads, she was a face, a commodity of beauty to be filmed and admired. They had no idea that behind that stunning visage lay the mind of a brilliant engineer. Lamarr's double life was not one of scandal, but of intellect. By night, after long days of filming, she did not party, she invented. She had a drafting table installed in her home where she worked on varying technologies. Her most significant contribution came during World War II. Anxious to help the Allied cause and understanding the threat of German U-boats, Lamarr collaborated with composer George Antheil to develop a radio guidance system for torpedoes. They realized that radio-controlled torpedoes could be jammed by the enemy. Lamar's solution was frequency hopping, a method of switching frequencies in a pseudo-random pattern that the enemy could not predict or jam. They patented the idea in 1942. At the time, the US Navy ignored the invention, telling Lamar she could better serve the war effort by selling war bonds and using her beauty to boost morale. It wasn't until the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 that the technology was adopted. Today, her secret life as an inventor is the foundation of modern Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS technology. Lamar died in Florida in the year 2000. Her final wishes regarding her resting place reflected her complex identity. She was cremated, and her son took her ashes to Vienna, Austria, to be scattered in the Vienna woods, returning her to the city of her birth. However, in 2014, an honorary grave was established for her at the Vienna Central Cemetery, Zentralfriedhof. This site, located in Group 33G, tomb number 80, is a sculptural marvel. It features 88 stainless steel rods that create a visual effect of Hetty's face when viewed from the front, but disappear when viewed from the side. A perfect metaphor for her elusive nature and the duality of her existence as a visible star and an invisible genius. The grave is a tribute not just to the actress, but to the brilliant mind that the world ignored for too long. 9. Frank Sinatra, 1915-1998. Frank Sinatra was the voice. He was the chairman of the board, the man who defined American cool. His achievements are staggering. An Academy Award-winning actor, a singer who revolutionized vocal phrasing, and a cultural icon who spanned decades. From the crooning Bobby Soxer idol of the 1940s to the tuxedoed leader of the Rat Pack in the 1960s, Sinatra was American royalty. Yet this American success story was inextricably linked to a shadow government, the Mafia. Sinatra's double life as a liaison to organized crime was an open secret that he vehemently denied throughout his life. FBI files released after his death confirmed what many suspected. Sinatra was close friends with mob bosses like Sam Giancana and the Fischetti brothers. He didn't just socialize with them, he worked with them. The mob helped him break restrictive contracts early in his career and allegedly secured him the pivotal role in From Here to Eternity. Sinatra walked a razor's edge, dining with presidents by day and partying with hitmen by night. He acted as a bridge between the legitimacy of Washington and the criminality of Chicago. His hotel, the Cal Neva Lodge, was a safe haven where these two worlds collided, often disastrously. He was monitored by the FBI for decades, his file growing to thousands of pages, documenting his fights, his associations, and his role as a power broker for the underworld. Sinatra died of a heart attack in 1998. He is buried in Desert Memorial Park in Cathedral City, California, near his beloved Palm Springs. The grave is located in Section B8. It is a modest, flat headstone, easily missed if one is not looking for it. The marker reads, Francis Albert Sinatra, and the best is yet to come. People often leave miniature bottles of Jack Daniels, dimes, a reference to the kidnapping of his son when he needed dimes for payphones, and cigarettes on the stone. The grave is situated in the flat, hot desert floor under the open sky he loved. It is a quiet end for a man who lived a loud, dangerous life. The inscription suggests optimism, but the history buried there is a heavy mix of unparalleled talent and deep structural corruption. 8. Ernest Hemingway, 1899-1961. Ernest Hemingway was the titan of 20th century literature. A Nobel Prize winner, he defined a masculine archetype of the writer as a warrior, hunter, and adventurer. His prose was sparse and muscular, influencing generations of authors. He was known for The Old Man and the Sea, A Farewell to Arms, and his larger-than-life persona as a bullfight aficionado and big game hunter. But beneath the beard and the bluster, Hemingway dabbled in a game much more dangerous than safari hunting, espionage. Hemingway's secret life involved a strange and amateurish foray into the world of intelligence. During World War II, he set up his own private spy network in Cuba, known as the Crook Factory, ostensibly to hunt for Nazi submarines aboard his fishing boat, the Pilar. However, documents revealed in the 1990s from Soviet archives showed a deeper, more compromising connection. Hemingway was listed as an operative for the NKVD, the predecessor to the KGB. Recruited in 1941 before his trip to China, he was given the codename Argo. While he never provided any significant intelligence to the Soviets, leading them to eventually cease contact, the fact remains that America's greatest literary patriot had a secret file in Moscow. He played both sides, also offering his services to the U.S. Office of Strategic Services, OSS. This paranoia regarding surveillance, which many dismissed as a symptom of his mental decline in later years, turned out to be rooted in a kernel of truth. He really was being watched, because he really had played the game. Hemingway died by suicide in Ketchum, Idaho, on July 2, 1961. He is buried in the Ketchum Cemetery. His grave is a long, flat slab of slate, often covered in snow during the Idaho winters. It lies beneath the shade of 3 towering spruce trees. The grave is unpretentious, surrounded by the mountains he loved to hunt in. Visitors often leave pens, coins, and half-empty bottles of alcohol on the stone. The site is somber, heavy with the weight of his tragic end. There is no mention of Argo or the Crook Factory here, only the name of a man who tried to write one true sentence while living a life full of complex fabrications and hidden allegiances. 7. Josephine Baker, 1906–1975. Josephine Baker was the first black superstar, rising from poverty in St. Louis to become the toast of Paris in the 1920s. She was a dancer, a singer, and an actress. She is famous for her banana skirt dance and her electrifying stage presence. She was an icon of the jazz age, a woman who broke racial barriers with a smile and a shimmy. But while the world watched her dance, she was watching the world, specifically the movements of the Axis powers. When World War II broke out, Baker did not flee France, she fought for it. Her double life was that of a spy for the French resistance. Her fame was her cover. She could travel across borders for performances, carrying sheet music written in invisible ink that contained information about German troop movements and airfields. She charmed diplomats and generals at embassy parties, extracting secrets while they admired the star. She hid refugees and weapons in her chateau, the Château des Milandes. She was commissioned as a sub-lieutenant in the Women's Auxiliary of the French Air Force. This was not a publicity stunt. It was dangerous, life-threatening work. She used her celebrity as a shield, smuggling intelligence pinned inside her underwear, knowing that border guards would be too starstruck to search Josephine Baker. Baker died in 1975, shortly after a career retrospective. While she was the first American-born woman to receive full French military honors at her funeral, her physical remains rest in the Monaco Louis II Cemetery in Monaco. She was buried there dressed in her French military uniform, with her medals on her chest. The grave is a black granite tomb, inscribed with her name in gold. It is kept in immaculate condition, often adorned with fresh flowers. In 2021, she was inducted into the Pantheon in Paris, the highest honor for a French citizen. A cenotaph containing soil from St. Louis, Paris, and Monaco was placed there, but her body remains in Monaco. The grave in Monaco is a testament to the showgirl who was also a soldier, the exotic dancer who was a decorated hero of the Republic. 6. Roald Dahl, 1916–1990. Roald Dahl is the world's #1 storyteller. He created Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda, the BFG, and James and the Giant Peach. His imagination was whimsical, sometimes dark, but always magical. He is remembered as the tall, somewhat curmudgeonly man who wrote in a garden hut, creating worlds where children triumphed over cruel adults. Before he was an author, however, he was a dashing RAF pilot, and then a spy in a tuxedo. Dahl's secret life took place in Washington, D.C. during World War II. After being invalided out of the Royal Air Force due to injuries, he was sent to the U.S. as an air attaché. There, he was recruited into the British Security Coordination, BSC, a spy ring tasked with bringing the United States into the war and countering isolationist sentiment. Dahl was a seducer spy. He used his charm, his height, and his British accent to infiltrate the Washington elite. He slept with powerful women to gather intelligence, reporting back to London on the thoughts and plans of American politicians. He worked alongside Ian Fleming, the creator of James Bond, and his real-life exploits were often stranger than fiction. He passed information on Vice President Henry Wallace and acted as a propagandist, planting stories in American newspapers to garner sympathy for the British cause. The man who wrote about chocolate rivers learned his craft in the smoky rooms of diplomatic intrigue. Roald Dahl died in 1990. He is buried in the cemetery of the Church of St. Peter and St. Paul in Great Missenden, Buckinghamshire, the village where he lived and wrote. His grave is easily found. It is marked by a tree and a bench, and giant BFG footprints are painted on the path leading to it. The grave itself is a place of pilgrimage for children. They leave toys, onions, a reference to the BFG, and pencils. Dahl was buried with his favorite possessions: his snooker cues, some good burgundy, chocolates, HB pencils, and a power saw, a hobby of his. It is a whimsical sight, but it holds the remains of a man who was as much a manipulator of geopolitical secrets as he was a manipulator of words. 5. Jean Seberg, 1938-1979. Jean Seberg was the darling of the French New Wave. Her pixie haircut and her performance in Breathless, à bout de souffle, made her an icon of cool, effortless style. She was an American girl from Iowa who became a European sensation. On screen, she played characters who were detached and existential. Off-screen, she was deeply passionate and politically active, leading a double life that made her a target of the most powerful law enforcement agency in America. Seberg led a secret life as a financial and vocal supporter of the Black Panther Party and Native American activist groups in the late 1960s. This was not a hobby, it was a commitment that drew the ire of the FBI. Under J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI initiated a COINTELPRO operation specifically designed to neutralize her. They tapped her phones, followed her, and broke into her home. The most devastating blow came when the FBI planted a false story in the gossip columns claiming that the baby Seberg was carrying was not fathered by her husband, but by a Black Panther member. The stress of this surveillance and public humiliation caused Seberg to go into premature labor. The baby, Nina, died 2 days later. Seberg brought the baby's body to her hometown in Iowa and opened the casket to prove the rumors were lies, but the trauma broke her. Her secret life as an activist was criminalized and used to destroy her mental health. Jean Seberg's body was found in her car in Paris in 1979, decomposing, with a bottle of barbiturates and a suicide note. She is buried in the Montparnasse Cemetery in Paris, in Division 13. Her grave is simple, a flat stone that often goes unnoticed amidst the grander monuments of French intellectuals. The inscription gives her name and dates, 1938 to 1979. It is a lonely place for a woman who was hounded to death by her own government. The grave is a silent witness to the price she paid for her political convictions, a tragic end to a life that was systematically dismantled by those who saw her compassion as a threat. 4. Audrey Hepburn, 1929-1993. Audrey Hepburn is the epitome of grace. Films like Roman Holiday, Breakfast at Tiffany's, and Sabrina cemented her status as a Hollywood legend. She was known for her kindness, her fashion, and her humanitarian work with UNICEF in her later years. She projected an image of delicate fragility. However, this fragility masked a core of steel forged during a secret childhood life in war-torn Europe. Before she was a star, young Audrey was a courier for the Dutch resistance during the Nazi occupation of the Netherlands. During the Hunger Winter of 1944, while she was a starving teenager suffering from malnutrition, which gave her the slender frame she later became famous for, she danced in secret productions to raise money for the underground. These black evenings were held behind blackened windows with lookouts posted. More dangerously, she carried messages and illegal newsletters in her shoes, delivering them on behalf of the resistance. She witnessed the deportations of Jewish neighbors and the execution of her uncle. This secret past as a child soldier of sorts informed everything she did later in life. Her hatred of conflict and her devotion to starving children were not PR moves. They were born from the trauma of her own secret history. Audrey Hepburn died of rare abdominal cancer in 1993. She is buried in the tiny cemetery of Tolochenaz, Switzerland, the village where she lived for 30 years. Her grave is arguably the most modest of any global superstar. It is marked by a simple, rough-hewn stone cross and pink geraniums. The inscription is merely her name, Audrey Hepburn, and the years 1929-1993. There is no mention of Oscars or Hollywood. It is a grave that reflects the peace she finally found. The surrounding view of the Alps and the quiet of the village offer a stark contrast to the terror of her teenage years and the chaos of her stardom. It is a humble resting place for a woman who carried the secrets of war in her heart while she smiled for the cameras. 3. Oscar Wilde, 1854-1900. Oscar Wilde was the greatest wit of the Victorian era. A playwright, poet, and novelist, he wrote The Picture of Dorian Gray and the Importance of Being Earnest. He was a celebrity in the modern sense, famous for being famous, for his velvet jackets and his biting aphorisms. He was the center of London's literary society, but Wilde lived the ultimate double life, a life that, when exposed, led to his utter ruin. Wilde was a gay man in a time when homosexuality was a criminal offense. He maintained a facade of a married man with children while navigating the Victorian underground of rent boys and secret assignations. His secret life was his true life, one of love and desire that society deemed gross indecency. When he famously sued the Marquess of Queensberry for libel for calling him a sodomite, the legal system turned on him. His secret life was dragged into the light, details of his affairs with men were read out in court, and he was convicted. He was sent to Reading jail for 2 years of hard labor. The celebrity became a pariah. He emerged from prison broken, bankrupt, and in exile, living out his final days in cheap French hotels under the assumed name Sebastian Melmoth. Wilde died of meningitis in 1900 in Paris. He is buried in Père Lachaise Cemetery. His tomb is one of the most famous in the world. Designed by Jacob Epstein, it is a massive modernist angel flying with the speed of light. For decades, the tomb was the site of a strange ritual. Admirers would kiss the stone while wearing lipstick, leaving the angel covered in red and pink prints. Today, the tomb is surrounded by a glass barrier to protect the stone from the grease of the lipstick, which was eroding the monument. The glass is now covered in kisses instead. The grave is a shrine to a man who was destroyed for living a double life, only to become a martyr for the right to love. The inscription on the back is from his own ballad of Reading Jail. And alien tears will fill for him pity's long-broken urn, for his mourners will be outcast men, and outcasts always mourn. 2. Julia Child, 1912-2004. Julia Child brought French cuisine to the American table. With her warbling voice, her height, and her unpretentious attitude, she taught a generation that it was okay to drop the turkey or make a mess. She was the beloved French chef, a public television icon who seemed like everyone's eccentric aunt. Yet before she ever picked up a whisk, Julia Child held a top-secret clearance. During World War II, Julia McWilliams, her maiden name, joined the OSS, Office of Strategic Services, the forerunner to the CIA. She was not a cook, she was an intelligence officer. She worked directly for the head of the OSS, Wild Bill Donovan. Her work took her to Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, and China. She handled highly classified documents, organizing the flow of intelligence across the Asian theater. One of her most specific contributions was the development of shark repellent. The Navy was losing underwater explosives because curious sharks were bumping into them and setting them off. Julia and her team cooked up a chemical compound to deter sharks, her first foray into cooking for the government. She met her husband, Paul Child, another OSS officer, in the field. The jovial chef was, in reality, a seasoned veteran of the intelligence community who had managed secrets that could change the course of the war. Julia Child died in 2004, 2 days before her 92nd birthday. Unlike many on this list, she does not have a traditional grave. She was cremated. Her ashes were divided. A portion was interred at the Neptune Memorial Reef, an underwater crematorium and artificial reef off the coast of Florida, near Key Biscayne. The rest of her ashes were scattered, returning her to the elements. There is a wall of names at the Neptune Memorial Reef where she is listed. This underwater resting place, hidden beneath the waves, is a fittingly obscure memorial for a woman who spent her early years in the silent service. The world remembers the Boeuf Bourguignon, but the archives remember the shark repellent and the security clearance. 1. Moe Berg, 1902-1972. Moe Berg is the ultimate enigma. He was a Major League Baseball catcher who played for teams like the Chicago White Sox and the Boston Red Sox. He was a good field no-hit player, known for his intellect. He spoke multiple languages, including Sanskrit, and was a graduate of Princeton and Columbia Law School. To the fans in the stands, he was just a smart guy in the bullpen. In reality, he was the most intellectual spy in American history. Berg's double life began before the war but peaked during it. He worked for the OSS. His most famous mission occurred in 1944. He was sent to Zurich, Switzerland with a gun in his pocket and a cyanide pill in his mouth. His target was Werner Heisenberg, the lead scientist of the Nazi atomic bomb project. Berg posed as a Swiss physics student attending a lecture by Heisenberg. His orders were simple and terrifying. If Heisenberg said anything that indicated the Nazis were close to building an atomic bomb, Berg was to stand up and shoot him dead in the lecture hall. Berg listened, understood the complex physics, determined the Nazis were failing, and kept his gun in his pocket. He saved the world from a potential atomic escalation by not firing. Berg died in 1972 after falling from his bed. His final words were, "How did the Mets do today?" But his grave is the final mystery. He was cremated. His sister Ethel initially took his ashes. It is said she buried them in an undisclosed location in Israel, or perhaps scattered them in the Jersey mountains. There is no marked grave for Moe Berg, the man who walked through occupied Europe with a pistol and a mastery of quantum physics, vanished into the air, just as he had drifted in and out of the shadows during his life. His grave is nowhere and everywhere. He is the ghost of the diamond, the catcher who caught secrets, the only man in history whose baseball card hangs in the headquarters of the CIA.